There's no place like home. The Wizard of Oz wasn't just a magical journey down the yellow brick road. It was a production nightmare that nearly killed its stars, poisoned its actors, and traumatized a teenage Judy Garland for life. Behind those ruby slippers and rainbow dreams lay a hellscape of toxic makeup, dangerous stunts, studio exploitation, and accidents that would shut down any modern production. Margaret Hamilton caught fire, Buddy Ebsen nearly died from aluminum poisoning, and Judy Garland was force-fed diet pills and sleeping pills to maintain her grueling schedule. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 20 weird facts about the Wizard of Oz that reveal the shocking truth behind Hollywood's golden age. Plus, I'll save the most disturbing fact for the very end, something that will completely change how you watch Dorothy's journey home. So grab your ruby slippers and let's head down this dark yellow brick road. The original Tin Man was literally poisoned by his makeup. Buddy Ebsen was MGM's first choice for the Tin Man, and it nearly killed him. He was essentially poisoned by the so-called makeup and was hospitalized just 9 days after filming had begun. He was required to sit under an oxygen tent in order to recover from the poisoning. The aluminum powder used in his makeup coated his lungs, causing a severe allergic reaction that left him gasping for breath. Ebsen's voice became so raspy he could barely speak. What started as a dream role became a medical emergency. The studio quietly replaced him with Jack Haley, but not before Ebsen spent weeks recovering in the hospital. His ordeal became Hollywood legend, a cautionary tale of what studios would risk for the perfect shot. The Wicked Witch literally went up in flames. Margaret Hamilton's exit from Munchkinland wasn't just movie magi, it was a genuine disaster. During the scene where the Wicked Witch disappears in a puff of smoke, a trapdoor malfunction left Hamilton standing directly over the pyrotechnics. The copper-based green makeup covering her face and hands ignited, causing severe burns. Margaret Hamilton catching on fire during a scene, highlighting the difficulties faced in creating the iconic special effects. She suffered second-degree burns on her face and third-degree burns on her hands. The studio forced her back to work before she'd fully healed, leading to permanent scarring. Hamilton later said the pain was excruciating, but the show had to go on. Jack Haley's Tin Man replacement wasn't much better. When Jack Haley replaced the hospitalized Buddy Ebsen, the makeup department switched from aluminum powder to aluminum paste. Bad decision. But the paste gave Haley an eye infection that required surgery. And speaking of face makeup, all of it was toxic, so the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion and the Wicked Witch, along with the Tin Man, couldn't eat at all while wearing it and could drink only through straws. The costume was also incredibly stiff. Obviously, it's the Tin Man. Haley couldn't rest in the costume whatsoever because he couldn't sit down. For months of filming, Haley stood between takes, unable to eat solid food, sipping liquids through a straw while his eye festered beneath toxic paint. Judy Garland was force-fed diet pills and sleeping pills. At just 16 years old, Judy Garland became MGM's golden goose, and they treated her like property. She claimed that the studio executives gave her uppers and sleeping pills so she could keep up with the demanding pace of show business. She struggled with a drug addiction and attempted suicide several times before she died of an accidental overdose on June 22, 1969, at just 47 years old. Studio executives controlled every aspect of her life, pumping her full of amphetamines to keep her energized during the grueling 18-hour days, then sedating her with barbiturates so she could sleep. This cycle of pharmaceutical abuse started on The Wizard of Oz set and haunted Garland for the rest of her short life. The snow was actually deadly asbestos, that magical snowfall that wakes Dorothy and her friends in the poppy field. It was 100% industrial asbestos. From asbestos-filled snow to toxic face paint, the behind-the-scenes of the Wizard of Oz cast were plagued with scandals and OH&S issues. In 1939, Nobody understood the cancer risks of asbestos exposure. The white, fluffy fibers looked perfect on camera, drifting down like winter magic. Cast and crew breathed it in, rolled around in it, and let it settle on their skin for hours. Decades later, many would develop mesothelioma and lung cancer. The very substance that saved Dorothy from the Wicked Witch's poisoned poppies was slowly killing everyone on set. Fact number 6, the film had 5 different directors. The Wizard of Oz wasn't just a production nightmare, it was a directorial revolving door. Mix heavy drinking and depravity with a few unfortunate on-set catastrophes, add some early movie-making naivety, and divide among 5 different film directors. Richard Thorpe was fired after 2 weeks. George Cukor lasted just a few days before being reassigned to Gone with the Wind. King Vidor handled the sepia-toned Kansas scenes. Norman Taurog directed some Munchkinland sequences. Finally, Victor Fleming took over and saw the project through to completion. Each director brought different visions, creating continuity nightmares and constant script rewrites. The chaos behind the camera rivaled anything happening in Oz. Judy Garland's breasts were bound to look younger. Studio executives wanted Dorothy to look like an innocent child, not a developing teenager. The Tin Man suffered a near-fatal reaction to his makeup, routinely had her bust bandaged down painfully to make her look more flat-chested. Every day of filming, costume assistants tightly bound Garland's chest with painful bandages, creating the illusion of a prepubescent girl. The binding caused daily discomfort and made breathing difficult during the demanding musical numbers. This physical manipulation was just one way MGM controlled every aspect of Garland's appearance and identity, treating the teenage actress like a manufactured product rather than a human being. Over the Rainbow was almost cut from the film. The most iconic song in movie history nearly hit the cutting room floor. It was 2 hours long, and producers had to cut it down by at least 20 minutes for it to be a reasonable length. Over the Rainbow was originally cut because producers thought the black and white scenes dragged and that younger audience wouldn't understand the song's message. Studio executives considered the ballad too slow and depressing for a children's fantasy. They argued that audiences would lose interest during the emotional Kansas sequences. Only after multiple test screenings and passionate pleas from associate producer Arthur Freed did Over the Rainbow survive. That song would later become Garland's signature and the American Film Institute's greatest movie song of all time. Fact number 9. The ruby slippers were originally silver. Frank Baum's original novel featured silver slippers, not ruby. MGM changed the color specifically to showcase their new Technicolor technology. The red shoes would pop against the yellow brick road, creating a visual spectacle that black and white theaters couldn't match. Multiple pairs were crafted, each costing thousands of dollars with genuine sequins and hand-sewn beading. Another of the dresses sold at auction in 2015 for nearly $1.6 million. Many other costumes have fetched 6-figure prices as memorabilia. Those ruby slippers became American icons, but they started as a marketing gimmick to sell movie tickets. The production was the most expensive in Hollywood history. There had never before been so much money thrown at special effects, makeup, costumes, reshoots, rehearsals, and extended production times in Hollywood history. All told, The Wizard of Oz cost a whopping $3 million to create. In 1939, $3 million could buy 30 average homes. MGM spared no expense, building elaborate sets, hiring hundreds of extras, and perfecting revolutionary special effects. The massive budget reflected the studio's desperation to compete with Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which had proven that fantasy films could generate enormous profits. And speaking of expenses, go ahead and like and subscribe because we're about to dive into even darker territory where the real costs weren't measured in dollars but in human suffering. The horse of a different color was actually multiple horses. The magical horse that changes colors in the Emerald City wasn't created with special effects, it was animal cruelty disguised as movie magic. The production used several white horses, coating them with toxic jello powder in different flavors to achieve the color-changing effect. Between takes, handlers had to prevent the horses from licking the sweet but harmful coating off their own bodies. The animals were essentially walking desserts covered in substances never meant for their skin or digestive systems. Multiple horses were used because the coating process was too stressful and dangerous to repeat on the same animal. Today's animal welfare standards would shut down such practices immediately. The Munchkins were paid less than Toto. The 124 little people hired to play Munchkins faced discrimination that extended beyond their paychecks. While Toto earned $125 per week, most Munchkins made just $50. They were housed in substandard accommodations and treated as circus curiosities rather than professional actors. Stories of wild parties and drunken behavior among the Munchkins became Hollywood legend, but many were exaggerated or completely fabricated by studio publicists looking for sensational press coverage. The real scandal was how MGM exploited their size for publicity while paying them poverty wages for weeks of difficult work in elaborate costumes and makeup. Fact number 13, the Cowardly Lion's costume. Weighed over 90 pounds, Bert Lahr's Cowardly Lion costume was a medieval torture device disguised as movie magic. The real lion skin and fur weighed over 90 pounds, making every movement exhausting. The heavy costume trapped body heat, turning Lahr into a walking sauna during the long, hot days under studio lights. He lost significant weight during filming and frequently collapsed from heat exhaustion. The costume's design made sitting impossible, forcing Lahr to lean against specially constructed supports between takes. His suffering was visible on camera. That look of exhaustion and discomfort in the lion's eyes wasn't entirely acting. Margaret Hamilton was kept away from children on set. The Wicked Witch's makeup was so terrifying that MGM banned Margaret Hamilton from eating lunch with child actors or visiting other sound stages in costume. Her copper-based green makeup and witch persona traumatized several young extras during early filming. Studio executives worried that seeing the Wicked Witch out of character might break the movie's magic for child audiences. Hamilton spent most of her filming days in isolation, eating alone through a straw while studio guards kept curious visitors away. The loneliness and isolation added another layer of misery to an already painful production experience. The tornado was created with a 35-foot muslin cone. The iconic tornado that transports Dorothy to Oz was achieved through dangerous practical effects that put the entire crew at risk. Special effects artists created the twister using a 35-foot muslin sock filled with Fuller's earth clay dust. The massive cone was suspended from the soundstage ceiling and rotated by hidden motors while fans blew the toxic dust in all directions. Crew members worked without respiratory protection, breathing clay particles for hours while fine-tuning the tornado's movements. The dust clouds were so thick that visibility dropped to near zero, making the set extremely hazardous for cast and crew working around heavy equipment and electrical systems. Judy Garland's only friend on set was the hospitalized witch. The air of screen-stealing competitiveness meant that her only friend on set was a recently hospitalized witch. While other cast members competed for screen time and attention, Margaret Hamilton became Garland's unlikely ally. Both were suffering under the studio system. Hamilton from her fire injuries and toxic makeup, Garland from pharmaceutical abuse and binding. They bonded over their shared misery, finding comfort in each other's company during breaks between takes. Hamilton's maternal instincts kicked in as she watched the teenage star being systematically destroyed by studio executives who saw her as a commodity rather than a person. The film used 29 sound stages and 65 different sets. The shoot lasted from October 1938 through March 1939 and required 29 sound stages and 65 sets, making The Wizard of Oz one of the most lavish productions of its day. It was rivaled that year in spectacle only by Gone with the Wind. MGM transformed their entire Culver City lot into the Land of Oz, constructing elaborate sets that stretched across multiple buildings. The yellow brick road alone required thousands of individually painted bricks arranged in spiraling patterns. The Emerald City set featured real crystal chandeliers and handcrafted architectural details that cost more than most entire films. This massive construction project employed hundreds of craftsmen working around the clock for months. The flying monkeys were actually stuntmen in painful costumes. The terrifying winged monkeys were played by highly trained stuntmen suspended from nearly invisible piano wires. The monkey costumes restricted vision and movement, while the wire harnesses cut into their bodies during aerial sequences. Several stuntmen were injured when wires snapped or rigging failed, sending them crashing to the ground. The flying sequences required dozens of takes to achieve the right effect, meaning hours of painful suspension for the performers. Between the restricted breathing, limited vision, and constant physical strain, playing a winged monkey was one of the most dangerous jobs on the set. The sepia sequences required painting, everything brown. The Kansas farm sequences weren't just filmed in black and white. Everything on set was literally painted sepia brown to achieve the proper effect. The production designers washed the entire interior of the Gale house in sepia paint, including Bobby Cochet, a stand-in for Judy Garland, who moved out of frame after the door opened to the colorful Munchkin land. Garland entered into the frame and graciously maneuvered through the land. Even Garland's dress and the actor's makeup were tinted brown to create the monochromatic Kansas world. This painstaking attention to detail meant that switching between color and sepia required complete costume and makeup changes, adding hours to already grueling filming days. The makeup was so toxic that cast members couldn't eat. Every major character except Dorothy wore makeup that was literally poisonous. All of it was toxic. So the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion and the Wicked Witch, along with the Tin Man, couldn't eat at all while wearing it and could drink only through straws. The lead-based paints and chemical compounds used to create the fantastical character looks were never meant for human skin contact. Cast members spent 12 to 18 hours per day unable to eat solid food, sustaining themselves on liquids sipped through straws. The toxic makeup caused rashes, chemical burns, and respiratory problems that lingered long after filming wrapped. Bonus fact, the film's success nearly destroyed Judy Garland's life. Here's the most disturbing secret of all. The Wizard of Oz's massive success became Judy Garland's personal prison. She struggled with a drug addiction and attempted suicide several times before she died of an accidental overdose on June 22, 1969, at just 47 years old. MGM executives saw their teenage star's breakthrough performance and immediately locked her into a brutal contract that controlled every aspect of her existence. They continued the cycle of uppers and downers that started during Wizard of Oz filming, using pharmaceutical dependency to keep their golden goose productive. Garland spent her entire career trying to recapture the magic of Dorothy, while being systematically destroyed by the same studio system that made her famous. The rainbow she sang about became a cage that trapped her until her tragic death at 47. The Wizard of Oz remains a beloved classic, but its legacy is built on human suffering that would be unthinkable by today's standards. Behind every magical moment lies a story of exploitation, danger, and corporate cruelty that reveals the dark heart of Hollywood's golden age. The next time you watch Dorothy click her ruby slippers together, remember the aluminum poisoning, the asbestos snow, and the teenage girl being slowly destroyed by the dream factory that made her a star. What other Hollywood classics hide similar dark secrets? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes revelations that will change how you watch your favorite movies. Because in Hollywood, there really is no place like home, and sometimes that's exactly the problem.